They say you know you're dead when the world forgets your name. I didn't need a grave to feel buried. I just needed to watch my daughter walk down the aisle like I never existed. The chapel smelled like roses and money. I stood at the back near the exit, behind the florist's scaffolding, right next to a stack of unused folding chairs. One of them should have had my name on it. I paid for all of it. Every damn flower, napkin, chandelier, champagne flute. Claire said it was too much. Jason said it was tradition. And I, like an old fool, signed the checks because tradition is all you have left when your wife dies and your daughter's all you've got. "Excuse me, sir," an usher said, trying to wave me out. "This area's off-limits for vendors." I just nodded, eyes fixed on Claire. My Claire. In the white dress we picked out together last fall, before Jason slithered in, before the phone calls stopped, before my name became something said behind closed doors. She walked down the aisle with Jason's stepfather on her arm. Not me. Not the man who held her hand during her first surgery. Not the man who taught her how to drive. Not the man who sold his vintage record collection to pay her NYU tuition. Not the man who built her this life. Her lips were smiling, but her eyes scanned the crowd like she was checking a list. Not for me, though. Not anymore. I reached into my coat pocket, fingers brushing against the velvet box I still carried like a damn habit. Her mother's locket. Clara wanted Claire to wear it on her wedding day. She wrote a letter. I was supposed to give it to her this morning. But she never invited me. 3 weeks ago, Claire said, "Maybe it's better if you don't come. It's going to be complicated." Complicated. The word people use when they're too cowardly to say unwanted. Jason's mother gave the toast. "Family," she said, "is not just about blood, it's about showing up." Laughter, applause. A raised glass of my $12,000 Dom Perignon. Jason kissed Claire's forehead. She giggled. I watched from the hallway unseen like a ghost with a wallet. Then the slideshow started. Photos of Claire and Jason's journey, beach vacations, their first apartment, dinner with his family. Nothing of me. Not one single shot. Not even the one where I'm holding Claire at her NYU graduation with tears in my eyes and a cracked rib from a car accident I had on the way there. Gone, erased. Like I never existed. "Dad," someone whispered. I turned. It was Marlene, my neighbor. She was the only one who knew I was even attending. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said, voice thin. "You should go in," she said gently. I shook my head. No seat for me. She looked away. I heard Jason say, "To new beginnings," and Claire replied, "To the future." That future didn't include me. Not unless they needed more money. Not unless someone needed to sign something in my name, again. My phone buzzed, a notification from my bank. I opened the app. $4,200 gone. Labeled wedding expenses from my joint account, the one Claire added her name to just to help manage things. I stared at the screen, then looked up at the chandelier sparkling over their dance floor. My chandelier. My name wasn't on the invitation, but it was all over the bill. They twirled and the crowd cheered. Claire caught my eye for a brief second. She blinked and looked away. Didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just like that, she buried me. If someone listening, don't let silence swallow your story. Don't wait until the obituary to speak. I walked out before they cut the cake. The sky was purple, just shy of night. Cold air bit through my coat. My knees ached from standing. I paused at the sidewalk, turned back to look at the glowing ballroom through the tall windows. Jason kissed Claire's cheek again. She laughed. And for the first time in my life, I felt what it was like to be the outsider in a story I wrote. I walked home without a coat buttoned. I left the locket in the mailbox. No note, no explanation. Just like they did with me. They didn't need to throw me out. They just made sure I no longer belonged. The guest room smelled like fresh paint and disrespect. Jason insisted on repainting it to feel brighter, but I knew what he meant. Make the room look less like a master bedroom and more like the back half of a motel. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, staring at the closed door. From the hallway, I heard Claire's voice, low and clipped, something about wire transfers and furniture invoices. Jason, he's not gonna notice. He never checks the statements. Laughter, footsteps. I did notice. I noticed everything. At breakfast, I waited for someone to say good morning. Nothing. Claire scrolled her phone. Jason chewed loudly, reading from his tablet. Hey, I said finally, I saw a notice from the bank. Something about a refinance application. Claire didn't look up. We're consolidating some things, easier that way. I asked. Jason smirked. It's a joint account, Sam, it's just paperwork. My name hadn't been Sam to either of them in months. Not since Claire moved me out of my master bedroom and into the guest room with the half-broken dresser and no lock on the door. You didn't talk to me about it. Jason put down his fork. We tried, you don't always remember. Claire shifted in her seat. Dad, we're trying to help. I don't need help, I need clarity. Jason pushed back from the table. Here we go again. Claire finally looked at me. Her eyes weren't angry. Worse, they were distant. We're managing things, Dad, just like Mom wanted, remember? I clenched my jaw. I remember her saying to protect what we built. That doesn't mean giving Jason the keys to my entire life. Claire flinched. Jason didn't. I'm not your enemy, Sam, he said, standing. But if you keep acting like we're stealing from you, this is gonna get uncomfortable. Already was. You don't feel the betrayal all at once. It leaks in, drip by drip, until your bed isn't yours, your money isn't yours, and your voice disappears from every room. The mail had stopped coming to me directly. Jason said it was for efficiency. Now it was sorted by them, filtered, stacked neatly on the kitchen counter where I was too afraid to touch it. But I watched. Claire tossed a blue envelope aside one morning like it was junk. Veterans Affairs. I waited until they left for their Pilates class, something they did together now, like they were auditioning for a lifestyle catalog. I opened the envelope with a butter knife. Inside, a statement of benefits. My benefits. Over $1,200 deposited monthly. The same benefits Claire said were delayed. Lied. I folded the letter and slid it under the false bottom of my shoebox in the closet, next to the copy of my original mortgage paperwork. That night, I stood in the hallway while they watched a Netflix documentary on elder care abuse. Ironic, I muttered. Jason paused it. What? I nodded toward the screen. The documentary. Claire frowned. It's just educational, Dad. Glad you're studying up. Jason stood. What is your problem? I don't like being handled. He took a step closer. Handled? You live here for free. Claire placed a hand on his arm. I stared at my daughter. I built this house in '89 with your mother. Every nail, every brick paid in cash. Claire's mouth tightened. Well, now it's ours. There it was, not a mistake, not a misunderstanding, a confession. My daughter believed I no longer belonged in the home I bled for. I returned to the guest room, closed the door, and pressed my forehead against the cool wall. They changed the Wi-Fi password that morning. Claire said it was an accident. But I knew better. They weren't kicking me out. They were fatting me out. Like an old photograph left in the sun too long. Tomorrow I'd call the bank. Just to check the balances. Just to confirm what I already feared. The last sound I heard that night wasn't the TV or their voices down the hall. It was the hollow click of my door not locking. Again. Some betrayals don't come with shouting. They come in silence, in the things missing when no one thinks you'll notice. I couldn't sleep again. Too quiet. Even with the door closed, I could still hear Jason's low laugh from the living room. He laughed like he owned the place now. Maybe he did. I got out of bed, padded barefoot down the hallway, careful not to creak the boards near the linen closet. They always groaned like an old man stretching. Didn't want them hearing. The hallway closet was where Clara kept everything that mattered. Her sweaters still hung on the far side, faint scent of lavender and wood polish clinging to the threads. I pushed them aside and reached for the green trunk beneath. I hadn't opened it in years, not since Clara's funeral, didn't have the stomach. Tonight I did. The old photo albums were still there. Brown leather frayed edges, our lives printed on Kodak in faded smiles. I carried them back to the guest room, sat on the bed like a soldier sorting through medals after a lost war. Page after page I turned. Clara and I at the lake, Claire's first steps, the camping trip where she caught her first fish and cried because she didn't want to kill it. But the photos stopped too soon. There was a gap, a big one. 3 whole albums gone. The years between Claire turning 12 and Clara's passing, all missing. My hand trembled as I flipped through again. Had I misplaced them? No. They were always stacked in order. Clara labeled everything, dates, names, even the weather sometimes. These albums didn't vanish by accident. Someone took them. They didn't just want my house. They wanted my history, my proof, my presence. I opened Claire's wedding slideshow on the TV's shared drive. Jason had linked it to the home network so guests could relive the moment. All digital, all curated. Photo after photo of Claire with him, with his mother, his sister, his friends. Shots of them decorating the house, posing beside the fireplace Clara picked out from that Vermont artisan she loved. But no photos of me. Not even one. Even in the few Clara and me pictures that made it in, I'd been cropped out, replaced by Jason's stepfather. The photo from Claire's high school graduation, Clara in a scarf, me in a tie too tight for my neck, was missing entirely. Replaced with Jason kissing Claire's forehead on her college move-in day. That never happened. I was there. I drove the damn U-Haul. I felt something cold rise in my throat. They weren't just rewriting the future. They were editing the past. The next morning, I waited until Jason left for his networking lunch. Claire was in the kitchen, sorting mail and sipping her almond milk latte with 2 pumps of whatever syrup she liked now. "You been through the photo albums?" I asked. She glanced up, blinked twice. "What?" "The old ones, from the hallway trunk." Her fingers tapped the coffee lid. "I mean, not really. Why?" "They're missing." She looked at the mail like it had suddenly become fascinating. "Maybe you misplaced them." "No. Dad. They were there for 20 years. Now they're gone." Claire sighed. "I told Jason to digitize everything so it wouldn't get lost or damaged." "Then where are the originals?" Her mouth opened, closed. She took a long sip. "I'll ask him," she said finally. "Maybe they're with the wedding files." "They're not." Claire set the coffee down harder than necessary. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Why are you digging?" "I'm not digging," I said. "I'm remembering." And then softer, "That's all I've got left. When people try to erase you, they don't start with your name. They start with your story." That night I went back to the closet. Pulled out Clara's favorite sweater. In the pocket I found a folded envelope I didn't recognize. No stamp, no address, just her handwriting. For when she forgets. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I slid it into the inside lining of my jacket, the same one I wore when we buried her. Because something was wrong. Deeper than I thought. And Clara knew it long before I did. The wind howled against the window that night, the kind of howl that feels like a warning. Sometimes the only thing more painful than betrayal is realizing you don't have the strength to fight it alone anymore. Eid always brought the good bourbon, not the kind you pick up at a gas station and pretend is top shelf. The real stuff, oak-aged, complex, sharp going down. We sat behind the shed that Saturday evening. The sun was bleeding out behind the trees. I could still hear Claire's voice from inside the house, something about paint swatches and home staging. She was planning changes again. Eid handed me the glass. "You look like hell." "I live in a guest room now," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You built this place." "I know." We sipped in silence for a minute. Crickets were already stirring in the brush, that dry late fall hum, the sound of endings. Eid finally spoke. "What the hell is going on, Sam?" I looked down at my glass. "The deed's missing." Eid didn't flinch. "I went to the county site. There's a record of a refinance I never approved. Shows Jason and Claire as co-owners now." He whistled low. I nodded. "Then I found a copy of something else. Claire's new lawyer drafted it. Guardianship petition. Says I'm experiencing cognitive decline. Wants emergency rights to make financial decisions." Eid turned his glass slowly. "That's a serious claim." "It's a serious lie." He studied me for a long time. "What do your doctors say?" "I passed a full neuro panel 2 weeks ago. Clean. I'm sharper than Jason's golf game." "Which ain't saying much," Eid muttered. I let out a hollow chuckle, but it caught in my throat. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from restraint, from holding everything in too long. "She took my photos, Eid," I said. "Digitized them, cropped me out, rewrote our lives." Eid swirled the bourbon. "You said something once back in school. What was it?" I raised an eyebrow. He grinned. "Every lie has a paper trail." I smiled, weak. Didn't know I'd be chasing my own daughters. Then he leaned in, voice low. "Do you still have your war chest?" I paused. The words hit something buried. I hadn't heard that phrase in years. Clara's gift, a fireproof lockbox. She gave it to me on our 40th anniversary and said, "For when trust isn't enough." It sat buried under tools and tarps in the shed behind us. My war chest. It wasn't money I'd buried in that box. It was memory, evidence, proof that I once mattered. I stood up without a word and walked to the far corner of the shed. Eid followed. I knelt and pulled back the tarp. Dust scattered in the shaft of golden light cutting through a crack in the wall. The box was still there. Locked heavy. I turned the dial. Click. Inside. The original deed, dated 1989, notarized and stamped. Clara's handwritten will, her final wishes for the house and for Claire. My DD-2 14 discharge papers. A folder labeled pension accounts, confidential. And a mini cassette recorder with half a dozen tapes. Eid let out a low whistle. "You've been busy." Clara was the organized one. I just followed orders. He picked up the deed and scanned it. "No liens, clean title, in your name only. This predates any refinancing Jason pulled." I nodded. "They don't know it exists." He looked at me. "Then we've got leverage." "And the tapes?" I asked. "If those have what I think they have, conversations, threats, anything, they're gold." I reached into the box and pulled out the envelope I'd found in Clara's sweater. "For when she forgets," I read out loud. Eid didn't say anything. I didn't open it. Not yet. Back at the shed door, I turned to him. "I want to fight, Eid, but I want to win clean. No shouting matches, no yelling in courtrooms. I want them to feel the silence when everything they wanted slips through their fingers." Eid sipped his bourbon. "I'll help you, but you need to play the long game." "I've been playing the long game since Claire started calling Jason honey, louder than she called me dad." He nodded slowly. Then let's sharpen your knives, old friend. Paper cuts can bleed just as long. They buried me in my own house. Now I'll unbury the truth, one document at a time. When someone wants you powerless, they don't come for your fists first. They come for your mind. The first note showed up on the kitchen counter, a post-it in Claire's handwriting. You already took your meds, Dad. Don't double dose. I picked it up, turned it over. No other writing, just that single sentence. But I hadn't taken them. The pillbox was still full. I kept track down to the hour. Old habits. The military taught me that every action, every routine accounted for. Still, when I asked, Claire smiled politely and said, "Just trying to help." The second note was stuck to the fridge. Don't forget, trash day was yesterday. It was. I'd rolled the bins out myself that morning, 6:00 sharp, same as always. The third was the worst, taped to my bathroom mirror. You already showered, Dad. I hadn't. But when I tried to argue, Jason laughed. You're just stressed. Happens to people your age. Claire's eyes stayed on her phone. We'll manage it, Dad, don't worry. That night I sat in the shed with Ede. The bourbon glass between us, the war chest at my feet. They're building a case, I said, making me look like I can't remember anything. Ede leaned forward. That's Guardianship 101. They're laying groundwork. I rubbed my temples. It's not just the notes. Claire's been telling the neighbors I ask the same questions over and over. Jason said I forgot how to start the lawnmower. I built the damn engine. Ede sipped. Then we hit them with something they can't argue. What? A neurological exam, full cognitive panel. We get it on record, signed by a specialist. You're sharp, we prove it. Paper versus whispers. I stared at the dust floating in the beam of his flashlight. Paper versus whispers. The only kind of war I could still fight. 2 weeks later, Ede drove me to Wexford Neurological Center. White walls. Sharp smells of disinfectant and coffee burned too long on a hot plate. Dr. Patel was calm, clinical. Young, maybe mid-30s, but her eyes were steady. She asked me about memory lapses, about mood, about my daily routines. Then the tests began. Repeat these numbers after me. Draw this clock face. Name as many animals as you can in 1 minute. What's the date today? Where are we right now? I answered every question clean. I repeated the numbers backwards. I drew the clock with all hands correct. And when she asked me to name animals, I rattled off 30 before the minute was up. Half the zoo. At the end, Dr. Patel folded her notes. Mr. Anderson, you show no signs of cognitive impairment. Normal age-related forgetfulness. Maybe. But dementia, decline, absolutely not. I nodded, jaw tight, put it in writing. She smiled faintly. Already did. They wanted me confused, but nothing is clearer than a test passed under pressure. When Ede dropped me home, Claire was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. Jason sat at the counter with his laptop open. How was your appointment? Claire asked casually, like she already knew. Fine, I said. I placed the folder on the counter. Doctor says I'm sharper than both of you put together. Jason chuckled. Doctors just want your money, Sam. Ede leaned against the doorway. Funny, this one signed her name on state-certified letterhead. Pretty expensive forgery if you ask me. Claire's spoon stopped mid-stir. Dad, we're just trying to keep you safe. You're trying to make me disappear, I snapped. Her eyes flicked to Jason, then back to me. That's not true. I tapped the folder. This says otherwise. Jason closed his laptop. Paper doesn't change reality. I leaned forward, voice steady. No, but it proves whose reality is a lie. Later, alone in my guest room, I opened the report again. Crisp black ink. My name spelled correctly. Mental status, intact, fully functional, no evidence of decline. I traced the words with my finger. Proof I wasn't crazy. Proof Clara's house, Clara's legacy, couldn't be stolen with whispers and post-it notes. Outside my door, I heard Jason's voice, low and sharp. This complicates things. Claire's answer was almost a whisper. Then we make him look worse. The test said my memory was fine, but I'll never forget hearing my own daughter plan my erasure one room away. You don't need a gun to commit a theft. Just a signature no one questions, and a father who doesn't know he's being erased. The crawl space was just as I left it a decade ago, tight, dry, and full of spiders who didn't mind keeping secrets. I laid down on my side, flashlight clamped between my teeth, and pulled myself along the boards until my hand touched metal. The lockbox. Still there. Dented corner, dust thick as ash. I dragged it out and cracked it open with the old combination, Clara's birthday. Click. Inside, the original deed. Crisp, notarized, signed in 1989 by me and Clara, witnessed by two friends who are now both 6 feet under. No mention of Claire. No co-signers. No liens. No second mortgage. I sat there staring at it, heart pounding. This was truth. Then I saw the flash drive. Red, labeled in my own shaky handwriting, FINANCIALS backup. I didn't remember labeling it, but I remembered the files. Back when Clara got sick, I started backing up everything. Pension, life insurance, disability, bank accounts, tax returns. Paper can vanish, drives last longer. I dusted myself off, box under my arm, and returned to the guest room. Plugged the drive into my old laptop, the one Jason said was too outdated to keep around. Windows booted with a whir that sounded like a dying fan blade, but it worked. The folders opened like tombs. One by one I clicked. Wells Fargo joint account statements, up through 2020. Lockheed pension reports. VA benefit deposits. Property tax receipts. Letters from Clara's estate attorney. It was all there. I opened the current county tax portal on my phone, checked the ownership status. Claire Anderson and Jason Millman, co-owners. Transferred June 9th. That was 2 weeks after Claire asked me to sign a few things for the insurance policy. There was no insurance policy. They'd filed for joint ownership with a copy of a quitclaim deed. My name was on it, so was a notary stamp. But I'd never signed it, never seen it. And that notary, not listed in the state registry. Fraud doesn't always look like a robbery. Sometimes it's filed quietly between wedding photos and bank statements. I printed everything from the flash drive, dozens of pages, proof of my original ownership, my signature styles, side-by-side samples. Then I compared them to the probate filings Claire submitted. Ede had gotten them through a quiet court clerk he still played poker with. Different slant, different pressure. No doubt in my mind it was forged. I highlighted the inconsistencies, one by one. Pressure points. Exposed seams. Claire thought I couldn't use a printer. Jason thought I couldn't read a balance sheet. They forgot I spent 30 years managing classified reports for Lockheed Martin. This was child's play. That evening, I sat down to dinner with them. Jason poured wine. Claire reheated lasagna from the gourmet place downtown. "Anything interesting today, Dad?" she asked sweetly. I looked up from my plate, went through some old files. Jason stiffened. Claire blinked twice. "Anything useful?" she asked. "Just paperwork," I said. "House stuff, deeds, tax filings." Jason sipped his wine too fast. Claire smiled tight. "That's probably outdated, Dad. We updated everything with the estate attorney last month." Ahem. I wiped my mouth. "What's the notary's name again? The one who did the quitclaim deed?" Claire paused. God, I forget Jason." He shrugged. "We had it done at the bank. I think her name was Meredith, Melanie." "Interesting. I looked her up today. State registry doesn't list a Meredith or Melanie under notary licenses. Their silence clanged like a dropped plate. I let it hang. Then I stood, picked up my plate and carried it to the sink. "Be careful with the paper trail," I said over my shoulder. "Sometimes it bleeds. You can fake a signature, but you can't fake who knows the truth. Especially when the person you're trying to erase never forgot where he hid the proof. It's one thing to lose your daughter's love. It's another to hear her sell you off like an estate sale item." The house was quiet that afternoon except for Claire's voice drifting down the hall. She thought I was asleep in the guest room. I was. I hadn't been sleeping much at all. Her tone was soft, but I caught every word. "My father's not competent anymore," she whispered. "We need this signed before probate clears." I froze, back pressed against the wall. Not Dad, not even Sam. My father. Like a problem in her way. The lawyer's muffled voice spilled from the speaker, too faint to catch. Claire responded, sharper this time. "If we wait, it'll complicate things. He's starting to ask questions." I heard papers shuffle. A pen clicked. Jason's voice entered the room. "He doesn't even know what's missing. We've got time." Claire hushed him. "Just get the paperwork ready. Guardianship, executor rights. He can't make his own decisions anymore." The line went quiet, then laughter, soft, cruel, practiced. Jason's, not hers. I stayed still until the call ended. Only then did I realize my hand was gripping the edge of the doorway so hard the wood had splintered into my palm. At dinner, neither of them looked at me. Claire talked about curtains. Jason talked about his new golf irons. I chewed each bite like it was leather, swallowing rage with every forkful. When they left for their evening walk, what they called clearing our heads, I went to the shed and called Ede. He answered on the second ring. "Sam." "They're filing guardianship," I said. My voice sounded calm even to me, but my chest was a furnace. "Claire said I'm not competent anymore. They want it signed before probate clears." Silence, then Ede's voice low and steady. "Then we fight harder." "I don't want to fight, I want justice." "Justice," he said, "takes paperwork." They underestimated me because my hands shake sometimes, because I forget where I put the TV remote. They forgot the difference between age and incompetence. I met Ede at his office the next morning, a dusty converted garage he used when clients from the old days came calling. No plaques on the wall, just stacks of files and the smell of stale coffee. I laid out the deed, the pension reports, the forged quitclaim, the neurological exam signed by Dr. Patel. "This is good," he said, flipping through, "but it's not enough." I leaned forward. "Why?" "Because courts don't just want proof of what's real. They want proof of what's fake. We need a notary statement. We need witnesses. We need a chain of custody that makes their forgery collapse under its own weight. And if we do, they'll strip you clean before you even get to argue." I sat back, rubbed my face. Claire used to call me when she couldn't sleep. After her mom died, she'd sit on the porch and talk for hours, said I was the only person she trusted. I swallowed hard. Now she says I can't make my own decisions. Ede's eyes softened, but his tone didn't. "That's what greed does, Sam. It rewrites memory, but paper still tells the truth." When I got home, Claire was waiting in the kitchen, smile tight, arms folded. "Dad, we need to talk." I raised an eyebrow. "About?" "Your finances, your health. We've been managing things, but it's time to make it official." Jason slid a folder across the counter. "Sign this. Just standard guardianship forms. Makes life easier." I didn't touch it. "Easier for who?" Jason smirked. "For everyone." Claire's eyes darted to mine. "Dad, please, we just want what's best." I leaned on the counter, staring at the folder. My voice was steady. "I had a full exam last week, sharp as ever. Doctor put it in writing." Jason's smile faltered. Claire's lips parted, but no words came. I straightened, took the folder, and slid it back toward them. You're right about one thing. It's time to make it official, just not the way you think. They thought I was losing my grip, but I wasn't the one holding forged papers in a kitchen full of lies. There are truths so sharp, they don't fade with time. They wait, like loaded rifles behind locked doors, until someone's ready to pull the trigger. I hadn't gone into the attic since the year Clara died. Dust, darkness, and the scent of old linen hung in the air like grief that never got cleared out. I pulled the string on the hanging bulb. Yellow light flickered like it had to remember how to be bright. The insulation was torn in one corner. Claire and I used to crawl around up here during storms, pretending we were in hiding. She used to call me Captain Dad. I'd almost forgotten that. Now I was just the man in the guest room. I found the box near the far wall, buried behind an old Christmas tree and 3 crates of forgotten junk. Labeled in Clara's handwriting, Claire Wedding. Not photos or mementos. Just her name. Claire. I sat down cross-legged, careful of my knees. The box creaked open. Inside, dried rose petals, Clara's favorite brooch, and a stack of envelopes bound with twine. One envelope was thinner than the rest, the ink slightly smeared. On the front it read, "To Claire, open on your wedding day. Love, Mom." I hadn't seen this since the week Clara wrote it. I remember her hunched at the kitchen table, pen in hand, candle burning low. She asked me not to read it then, said it was just a few thoughts for our girl. I'd promised to give it to Claire on her big day. I never did. Because I wasn't invited. Some betrayals rot from absence, not action. You forget what you were meant to protect until it's almost too late to recover it. My fingers trembled as I opened the seal. The paper was soft with age, but the words were fierce. Claire, if you're reading this, I'm not there to hug you, but I'm there in every choice you make. Marriage is not just love. It's inheritance of duty, of memory, of legacy. Never confuse inheritance with entitlement. What your father and I built came from sacrifice. It is not owed to you, it's entrusted to you. If you ever find yourself choosing between control and compassion, remember, control dies with the signature. Compassion lives in how you use what's given. And if your father ever seems difficult, remember, he gave up everything so you'd never have to feel unsafe. Don't betray that. Love. Mom. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My mouth went dry. I reread it 3 times. Downstairs, Claire was laughing at something on her phone. The woman Clara had written to, the daughter who respected legacy, who understood trust. She wasn't the one living in my house anymore. That Claire was buried under spreadsheets and entitlement. But this letter, this was dynamite, proof from the grave. Clara's voice, unedited, unfiltered, undeniable. I walked into the kitchen, holding the envelope. Claire glanced up. What's that? I handed it to her. She frowned. What is this? Something your mother wanted you to have, on your wedding day. Claire hesitated. Where'd you find it? In the attic, with the rest of the truth. Jason leaned against the counter. Why now? I ignored him. You can read it now or not, up to you. But know this, Clara saw through people. She knew what mattered, and she left behind her words to guide you. Claire stared at the envelope like it was radioactive. I turned and walked out, leaving them in silence. That night, I found the letter open on the kitchen table. It wasn't torn, but it wasn't in Claire's room either. Jason's voice echoed faintly down the hallway. She's just manipulating you from the grave. Claire didn't answer. A mother's voice never fades, not when it's honest. And not when her daughter's heart is still learning the difference between love and possession. A will is not a gift, it's a final truth, and mine would be written in ink sharp enough to cut through every lie they ever told about me. Ede and I met in his office on a rainy Thursday, the kind of steady drizzle that made your bones ache even before you stepped outside. He laid the papers out on the table like they were sacred. To me, they were. "Everything clear?" he asked, tapping the first page. I nodded. "Veterans Foundation gets the house. Utilities and upkeep covered for any disabled vets who need housing." He nodded. "The Lockheed pension goes into a trust, anonymous, for seniors whose kids tried to gut them like fish." Ede grinned. "You still got that poetic fire." I didn't smile. "Add Marlene," I said. "She's checked on me more in 1 year than Claire has in 10. I want her to have the car and the savings account tied to it. She earned it." "Done." He pointed to the last clause. "And this." I looked down. "Claire Anderson shall receive the following: one framed letter from her late mother, a notarized statement from Dr. Patel confirming the test results, a single dollar as required for legal acknowledgement." I slid the pen across the desk and signed my name. "She left me out of her wedding. She'll be front and center for the reading of this will." We filed it quietly, no announcements, no last-minute disclosures. Ede had a contact at the probate court, still owed him from a zoning deal in '98. The filing went through in under 48 hours. Claire and Jason had no idea. They thought they had time. They thought I was still caught between memory lapses and coffee stains. But I remembered everything now. Every missing photo, every note left to gaslight me, every forged signature, every time Jason laughed at my shaking hands. I remembered it all. A week later, Jason brought in a manila envelope. "Estate planning packet," he said, like I didn't know the weight of those words. He slid it across the kitchen table. Claire sat beside him, arms crossed, face carefully blank. Jason continued, "This is just a draft. Once you sign, we can transfer the assets efficiently, avoid red tape." I picked up the envelope but didn't open it. "How long have you two been planning this?" Claire sighed. "Dad, don't make this dramatic, it's practical." "So is a fire escape," I said, "but you only need it when things go up in smoke." Jason frowned. "It's for your protection." I stood slowly, left the envelope where it lay. "I already signed a will," I said. Claire blinked. "What?" Jason's voice sharpened. "With who?" "Ede." Claire scoffed. "Ede, he hasn't practiced full-time in years. He remembers the law better than you remember who built this house." Jason laughed. "So that's it, you're cutting us out." I paused, turned at the doorway. "No, you did that yourselves. I'm just documenting it." That night I sat in the guest room, rereading the signed will. One paragraph lingered in my mind. "Claire shall receive her mother's letter, framed in walnut wood with museum-grade glass, so the words don't fade even when memory does." I imagined her opening that frame, reading what Clara wrote, seeing her name written in a way she hadn't seen in years, soft, loving, honest, and realizing too late that some inheritances are lessons, not rewards. The will wasn't revenge. It was preservation of everything they tried to erase. They didn't just forge my name, they forged my weakness, and that's the part I won't forgive. Ede called me just past noon. I was sitting on the porch with a mug of coffee I hadn't sipped, watching a squirrel try to carry off a pinecone twice its size. "Got him," Ede said without hello. "Got who?" The notary finally cracked. I sat up straighter. "Talk." Ede's voice was low, sharp. "His name, Bennett Care, works part-time at a strip mall tax place. Jason and Claire told him you had advanced cognitive decline, claimed you couldn't travel but wanted to finalize some estate transitions while you were still lucid." I clenched the mug. And he just believed that. They gave him a forged statement from some quack clinic fake, didn't verify, just stamped the papers and walked away $500 richer. And now, he emailed me a signed affidavit admitting it. Said he didn't know the full extent until he saw your name come up in a legal record. Panicked. Wants to wash his hands. My heart thudded. We've got him in writing. Yup, smoking gun. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Inside, Claire and Jason were arguing over patio furniture placement. Dad, Claire said, can you help us decide if the lounge chairs should face the garden or the fire pit? I stood in the doorway, watching her talk to me like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't dragged my name through a fake guardianship process and tried to rip every asset out from under me like a magician pulling a tablecloth. Face them toward the truth, I said. Jason frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means the notary confessed, I said. He gave Ed a signed affidavit. You want to see it? The silence hit fast, heavy. Claire's smile faltered. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. You had him stamp documents I never signed. Told him I was too sick to leave the house. Too far gone to know what day it was. Jason tried to play the fool. This is ridiculous. He admitted it in writing. If I bring it to the DA, that's felony fraud. Minimum 5 years. Claire's face drained. Dad. No, I snapped. You don't get to say dad when the last time you used that word was to get access to a bank account you didn't earn. Jason stepped forward. You're blowing this out of. Sit down. The words came out quieter than I expected, but Jason sat. Claire looked at me with something that flickered, maybe guilt, maybe just fear of consequence. Why didn't you come to us? She asked, voice cracking. I did. You called it confusion. You left notes pretending I'd forgotten things. You watched me fade and poured gasoline on it. Jason scoffed. It was her idea. Claire turned to him, stunned. Excuse me. He shrugged. You said he wouldn't remember. You said it was what your mom would have wanted. Claire stared at him like he'd just slapped her. She never said that, she whispered. I nodded. No, she didn't, but she did write something else. I handed Claire the framed letter. Her hands trembled as she took it. Jason leaned over to read, but she pulled it away. They had forged my name, but she couldn't forge her mother's words. I walked to the kitchen, took the folder from the drawer, and laid the notary's affidavit on the table. In 24 hours, Ed's filing this, unless you both sign a formal renunciation of all claims to my estate. Jason's face flushed red. You can't do this. I can, I said, and I will, and you'll thank me later for not pressing charges. Claire looked up, tears pooling now. Dad, I don't know what I became. You became someone who thought a signature was more powerful than a memory, I said. And then I left them sitting in silence. The pen may be mightier than the sword, but only when the ink is honest. They buried me on paper before my body was cold, but I was still breathing, and now I was burning. I was organizing documents in the study when I found it, a folder on my desktop named Legacy Drafts. Innocent enough. I'd been backing up files after Ed insisted I double-check everything. Just a little cleanup, he said. Keep your house in order before they do it for you. Inside were PDFs, financials, insurance policies. And then a Word file, obituary draft Claire approved. My throat tightened. I opened it. It started simple, my name, birthdate, military honors. But by the second paragraph, I stopped breathing. Survived by his loving daughter Claire Anderson and her husband Jason, who tirelessly cared for him in his final months. What? As executor of his estate, Claire intends to honor her father's wishes by preserving the family home and managing his philanthropic commitments. Lies, all of it. There was no mention of my wife, none of my career, nothing about the foundation I'd started with Ed, no veteran housing, no real legacy, just a neat little version of my life repackaged to serve theirs. Claire's name was listed 5 times, Mine just twice. Jason even wrote his name into the special acknowledgments at the end. Gratitude to Jason for handling the difficult logistics and caretaking with patience and grace. Patience and grace. He unplugged my TV 3 times just to save electricity. I stared at the screen for a long time, knuckles white around the mouse. Then I printed it. The paper was warm in my hands. Alive, unlike the version of me they'd already buried. Claire was in the kitchen when I walked in. She was on the phone, voice light. Yes, I think we'll go with ivory flowers. He always liked those. Simple, clean. I held up the page, planning ahead. She froze. Jason said it was just a precaution, she replied slowly. A precaution, I repeated, not a fantasy. She placed the phone down, her face tightening. You were the one talking about estate planning, we thought. No, you didn't think, you wrote me off. Jason stepped in from the hallway. It's a draft, that's all. Everyone should have one. I didn't write it, I snapped. You did. You named yourselves executors of a life you didn't build, a life you tried to steal. Claire's voice cracked. We didn't mean. Stop, I said. If you finish that sentence with to hurt you, I'll throw this in the fire. She swallowed her words. Jason looked at me like he always did, like I was in the way. You're not dead, he said, so what's the harm? I stepped closer, laid the obituary on the table between us. The harm, I said, is that you erased who I was before I was gone. You wrote my life without asking. You framed yourselves as heroes while I was still breathing. Jason scoffed. It's just words. No, I said, voice low. It's a lie in formal wear. They didn't want to mourn me. They wanted to inherit me. That night I sat with Ede in his office. The affidavit from the notary was filed. So was the will. Every document was sealed, time-stamped, and backed up. But I was still shaking. Look at this, I said, handing him the obituary. He read it, jaw tightening. They've gone from fraud to fantasy, he muttered. They wanted me gone, and they were practicing how to say it nicely. He folded the page. So let's make sure the only version of your life they get is the one you approve. I nodded. We're not done yet. No, Ede said, we're just getting started. The dead don't write their own stories. But the living, we still have ink. Some people only show their true face at a funeral, especially when they think no one's watching or listening. Are you absolutely sure about this? Ede asked, peering over his glasses as we sat across from the funeral director. As sure as a man watching his own child rewrite his obituary, I said, handing over a thick envelope. Ede slid over the forged death certificate, legal-looking but fake, and a pre-written obituary nearly identical to Jason's version. Only this time it had my real life in it, my late wife, my foundation, my military record, not a word about Claire. The director raised an eyebrow. You want a closed casket? Closed, I said. No body, no problem. He nodded slowly. We can hold it at St. Germain Friday morning, quiet just as you asked. Perfect, Ede said, then looked at me. You ready to attend your own funeral? I smirked. I've had worse parties. The day of the service, rain tapped the chapel roof like a ticking clock. Inside, rows of rented mourners, veterans Ede had contacted, old neighbors, a few kind-hearted souls who'd known me before Claire had rewritten the ending, sat quietly, waiting. Claire arrived in black, veil, designer heels, too much perfume. Jason looked uncomfortable, like a man forced into a suit for a meeting he didn't understand. The casket sat at the front, mahogany, expensive, empty. Claire walked up, stood before it. Everyone hushed. I stand here, she began, with a complicated heart. I was backstage, behind the curtain, listening. My father wasn't always easy. He could be stubborn, controlling, but in the end I tried to be there. She paused for effect, sniffled, rehearsed. And when he was no longer himself, I stepped in. Jason and I stepped in. My jaw clenched. Claire looked at the crowd, then turned to the casket. But the truth is, you were never really my family, not after Mom died. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jason's eyes widened. You held on to things that didn't belong to you, she continued, voice rising. You manipulated memories, controlled the house like it was your kingdom, and maybe you died the same way you lived, bitter, alone. And then came the line. You were never my family. Silence thick and stunned. Then Eid opened the back door and I walked in. Alive. Breathing. Not a ghost. Just a father returned from the dead. Claire turned and froze. Jason dropped the program in his lap. A camera's flash popped. Another, then a third. The news team Ida tipped off had arrived right on cue. I walked down the center aisle as whispers swelled into a murmur. He's alive. That's him. What the hell is this? Claire's face drained of color. This is a joke. He's supposed to be dead, I said, stepping onto the small stage. Sorry to disappoint. Jason stood. This is illegal. No, Ed said from the pew. What you two did is illegal. Forged signatures, financial fraud, elder abuse, theft, and now slander in public. I turned toward Claire. Her veil fluttered slightly from her trembling hands. I watched you mourn a man you erased, I said. I watched you lie through your teeth, but now everyone here has seen the truth. Jason's voice was rising. You faked your own death. That's insane. You wrote my obituary, I shot back. I just let you read it out loud. Claire's mouth opened, but no words came. The silence said enough. They buried me in words. I rose in truth. I will be pressing charges, I said, and every camera in this room has recorded your confession. Claire crumpled the funeral program in her hand. This wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. But it did, I said, because I'm not gone, and you don't get to decide when I am. I turned to the crowd. Thank you for coming. There won't be a burial today, but there will be justice. I walked out the front doors of the chapel into the gray rain. Alive. And finally seen. The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's resurrection. A man's legacy isn't what he leaves behind. It's what he refuses to give away to the unworthy. The room was quieter than a church after midnight. Heavy velvet drapes filtered the daylight into a dim, judgmental hue. Ede's office transformed for this moment. 3 chairs faced my desk. Jason took one like it owed him something. Claire refused to sit, arms crossed, jaw clenched. She hadn't spoken a word since the funeral that wasn't. 2 members from Ede's firm sat with pens poised. A videographer adjusted his tripod silently in the corner. Shall we begin? Ede asked, sliding a leather-bound folder in front of me. I nodded and opened it. My hand didn't tremble. I, Harold Thomas Mitchell, being of sound mind and body, I began, do hereby declare this to be my final last will and testament. Jason rolled his eyes. Claire's nostrils flared. In recent years, I have witnessed actions from my family that forced me to reevaluate my legacy, my purpose, and the values I want preserved beyond my death. I paused, making eye contact with Claire. Therefore, I have amended my estate accordingly. Jason shifted, cracking his knuckles. To my daughter, Claire Mitchell Anderson, I stopped again, met her stare head-on. I leave one thing, a framed letter written to her by her late mother on her wedding day. It was meant to be given in love. It is now given in truth. Ede handed her the envelope. Her fingers twitched, hesitant. She didn't open it. To Jason Anderson, her husband, I leave nothing. Jason leaned forward. Excuse me. You heard me. This is a joke. Ede cleared his throat. It's legal, signed, notarized, and backed by the evidence of your fraudulent activity. You'll want to stay quiet now." Jason's mouth opened, then shut. "To the Veterans Resilience Foundation, I leave the Mitchell property and $320,000 from the estate to support elder housing initiatives." Claire's face twisted like she just tasted acid. "To Mabel Jennings," I continued, "my neighbor who brought soup every Sunday for 10 years and never once asked for a thing, I leave my antique book collection, my savings account, and my thanks." I looked back at Claire. "To those who saw me, not what they could take from me, I give what matters." Jason stood abruptly. "You can't do this. We were family." "You buried that word when you buried me," I said. Claire finally spoke. "This is spiteful. You're cutting your own daughter out of your life." I exhaled slowly. "No, you did that yourself when you erased me from yours." She opened the letter. Her eyes scanned it. Her lips parted as she read her mother's handwriting, shaky but clear. "Claire, love is not owed. Inheritance is not a reward. Remember that legacy is something earned, not taken. If you ever forget this, you'll lose far more than money. You'll lose yourself." Her hands trembled as she folded the letter back up. Jason scoffed. "We'll fight this." Ede raised his eyebrows. "You'll lose." "I'll go to the press," Jason spat. "I hope you do," I said. "Let them see how you stole from a man who was still breathing. Tell them how you forged my signature. Tell them how you wrote my obituary while I was alive." He looked to Claire for backup. She said nothing. "Your own notary turned on you," Ede added. "We have his affidavit, your lawyer's emails, phone recordings, it's all admissible." Jason sank back into the chair like it had swallowed him. They expected to inherit a fortune. Instead, they inherited the weight of their own shame. "Any final statements for the record?" Ede asked. Claire opened her mouth, closed it. She stood, walked to the door, and hesitated. "Dad," she murmured. I looked at her. "I'm not your dad," I said. "Not anymore." She left without another word. Jason followed. The door clicked shut. Ede exhaled. I closed the folder. "Want a drink?" I asked. "God, yes," he muttered. "Some people don't deserve an inheritance. Some inherit nothing. Because that's exactly what they gave." When you build your life on lies, the truth doesn't just crack the walls, it floods the foundation. I didn't have to lift a finger. The storm came on its own. The affidavit leaked 2 days after the will reading. Ede swore it wasn't him, but I knew better. Maybe it was the notary covering his own skin. Maybe someone in the probate office with a conscience. Didn't matter. The internet did the rest. A Reddit thread titled "Daughter Fakes Dad's Death for House. Gets Nothing Instead" went viral. Then came the TikToks, the Instagram Reels, the YouTube commentary videos. Screenshots of the forged documents, snippets from the will reading, even the footage of Claire yelling, "You were never my family," at the fake funeral, over a closed casket. They looped it with violin music and captions like, "Imagine saying this at your father's funeral. He wasn't even dead." The hate rolled in fast. Claire shut down all her social media accounts within 48 hours. Jason tried to weather the backlash, posted a half-baked statement about misunderstandings in a difficult family situation. But his employer, a public-facing defense contractor, didn't appreciate the attention. By Friday, he was unemployed. I sat in my garden watching finches fight over the feeder, sipping my tea, listening to the phone buzz beside me. Claire tried calling again, Ede said, reading the caller ID. "She'll try every angle now," I muttered. "Pity, redemption, denial." "She left a voicemail yesterday," he added. "Sounded broken." I said nothing. "She said she lost her car. Jason's name was on the loan. Repo came in the morning." I took another sip. "Good," I finally said. Ede raised an eyebrow, no satisfaction in it. There's no pleasure in watching someone drown, I said, but I won't throw a rope to someone who pushed me overboard. They thought legacy was a transaction, but it's memory that writes the final invoice. By Sunday, local papers picked it up. Veteran betrayed by family in estate scam. Purple Heart recipient fakes death to expose daughter's fraud. Man declared dead walks into his own funeral, rewrites will, sparks legal firestorm. Claire's church revoked her community fund access. The women's shelter board she sat on asked her to step down. Jason's family, what little they had left, publicly distanced themselves. And through it all, I remained silent. I didn't speak to journalists. I didn't post. I didn't defend or explain. I let their silence roar. The doorbell rang Monday afternoon. Ede and I both froze. Through the window, I saw Claire, disheveled, pale, alone. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Dad, her voice cracked, I have nowhere to go. You had a home, I said quietly. You burned it. She looked down, eyes pooling. I made a mistake. No, I corrected. You made a series of decisions, repeatedly, willfully, coldly. I didn't think. You thought very carefully, I snapped. You forged my name. You filed legal papers. You stood at a fake funeral and yelled I wasn't your family. She blinked back, tears. That wasn't me. It was exactly you. Silence. The birds chirped behind us. I stepped back and closed the door. Slowly, without slamming. She didn't knock again. That night, Ede poured us each a drink. To the end of things, he said. I raised my glass, to the things that should have never started. We drank. Grief doesn't come when you lose someone. It comes when you finally see who they really are. Claire's collapse wasn't loud in the end. It was slow, quiet, the way a house sinks into its own rot. She and Jason disappeared from the public eye. The house they'd tried to steal was sold to fund housing for veterans. Their names faded from articles, posts, gossip threads. But mine returned. Not as a victim, but as the man who refused to die quietly. Sometimes justice looks like silence. Sometimes revenge is simply the truth. Not all endings are thunderclaps. Some are just a door that stays closed, and a lock that finally clicks. I wake to gulls instead of sirens now. The waves roll in like breathing, steady, old, patient. They don't judge the man watching from the porch. They don't care about deeds or betrayals or forged signatures. They just move. My house sits 3 blocks from the shoreline. 1 story, faded blue siding, windows that catch the morning light just right. No gates, no whispers behind doors, just the wind and the occasional laugh from the kids down the street who ride their bikes too fast and fall into the soft gravel. Sometimes I wave. Sometimes I just sip my coffee and let the sun warm my shoulders. I earned this quiet. Ede still visits, twice a month like clockwork. He brings the legal mail and the good bourbon. This came from the trust office, he said today, handing over a thin envelope. I opened it carefully. A donation receipt. 2 more families helped by the Clara Foundation. A single mother in Nebraska. A retired postal worker in Arizona whose kids stopped returning his calls. Both received housing stipends, legal aid, and a personal letter signed in my hand. You are not alone. Ede leaned back in the chair across from me, squinting into the sun. They're going to rename that housing unit after you, you know. I told them not to. Doesn't matter, you built it anyway. I nodded, then let it stand for them, not me. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what refuses to leave someone else behind. Claire hasn't called. Not a letter, not a text, not a second chance asked for. At first I waited, out of muscle memory I think, or maybe hope. But days turned to weeks, then months. And now silence suits us. Jason, I hear, moved back in with his brother, works nights at a warehouse near Buffalo. Claire's somewhere in Ohio. Last I heard, she was managing a pop-up vintage boutique. No one really shops there. They say time heals all things, but I don't want healing from them. I want space, and I have it now. The deed is back in my safe, original, notarized, untouched. The house belongs to no one but me. And the new will. Filed, final, sealed. I even added a clause about digital forgeries, just in case. Last week, I opened the drawer in my nightstand and found Clara's old letter again, the one she wrote to Claire. The paper had yellowed just slightly, but her words were still as sharp as ever. Inheritance is not love, Claire. It's not entitlement. If you want to honor your family, start by not stealing from it. I thought of sending it again, a copy this time, just to remind her what she threw away. But I didn't. Some names you stop repeating not out of vengeance, but because they no longer belong in your story. Forgiveness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just choosing to sleep well. The neighbor boy, Evan, helps me with the lawn. His mom works double shifts at the clinic. I pay him $10 and let him ride my old bike down the hill after. Mr. Callahan, he asked me last week, were you ever in a war? I nodded, a few, some with medals, some without. He looked confused. How can a war not have medals? I smiled, because sometimes you only win by walking away. There's a copy of the final will in a box under my bed. Another with Eid. And one locked in a safe deposit box. Not because I expect another ambush, but because paper trails matter more than bloodlines. And because peace, real peace, comes from knowing you've documented your worth, even if no one else could see it. They tried to write me off like a fading signature. But ink lasts longer than memory. And this time, it was my hand holding the pen.